Jeffrey Thompson checked into the hospital. Jeffrey was expecting to undergo routine surgery, but there was nothing routine about his operation. When he checked out of the hospital, Jeffrey was not the same man.
Law practice is a stressful environment, and you're dealing with a lot of very difficult situations. I used to wake up with a knot in my stomach every morning, feeling that stress.
He just was burdened by work. I mean, it was always on his mind. You know, it was a hard thing for him to turn off on the weekends or to get away from it.
I was just focused so intently on my career that I was letting what's really important fall by the wayside.
Jeffrey Thompson's law practice didn't take just his time and energy. The fast pace and the constant stress also took a toll on his body.
I maintained that stress, and it continued to work on me, and it also continued to work on my body. And eventually it broke down. I began having stomach pains, severe stomach pains, that initially I just had no idea what it was. I thought I had an appendix rupture.
Jeffrey had developed diverticulitis, a painful condition that attacks the intestinal wall. Months of natural treatments had failed, and his condition had become so advanced he needed surgery to remove part of his intestine. But what looked like a textbook operation left him suspended between life and death.
And I woke up to a surgeon pulling a sheet off of my stomach. And as I looked down, I knew immediately something was terribly wrong. And then I looked into the surgeon's eyes, and I could see concern on his face.
He had been hemorrhaging for almost 24 hours. And they had continually given him blood, but it was hemorrhaging into his abdomen, and they didn't know it, into his stomach. It was frightening. I've never seen anyone so pale, but his lips were just completely white.
My internal clock told me that I was getting ready to die, and I only had a few seconds of consciousness left. I reached up to grab my wife. I was just wanting to tell her how much I loved her and tell her that I was getting ready to leave her.
And I went to him. And it was right after that I lost him. You know, I could tell he left. And he took my hand, and then he was gone.
And my life came to my center torso. And I began to rise out of my body up into that room. Everything was going haywire down below me. They were saying, I'm going to lose him.
They were doing everything they knew to keep him alive at that point.
It looked like it was a disaster going on, but it was the sweetest day of my life. I never had any pain, and I never had any fear.
As Jeffrey's spirit hovered above his body, a light appeared.
It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It started in the center of the room toward the ceiling and began to filter out into that room, and I was immediately drawn to it. And as it began to hit objects in that room, color came flooding out like I've never seen before. My senses became enhanced. I could see everything in that room with perfect clarity. There was an entire dimension that we just simply don't see on Earth. I've never been more alive than I was at that moment. It was incredible. I suddenly had an overwhelming sense of God's presence, of His love, of His peace, of His joy. The thing that was just so incredible to me is how the maker of this universe, who can make the sun, the moon, and the stars in this earth and us, can come down and hold me and comfort me and love me as if I'm the only person in the universe. And I remember thinking about the prodigal son. That's what came to mind for me, that long-lost son that had gone out and strayed, and he had come back home. And his father was coming out to hold him and to love him and to welcome him back. That's what was happening to me. It's the sweetest love there is. I told him I wanted to go with him. And then I had a fleeting thought. But what about Madeline, my wife, and what about Will? My sweet wife is just falling apart down below me, and I'd never seen her that way. And I'm up here in complete comfort, in complete peace, in complete joy. And then God told me internally I was going to go back. Then I remember jolting in my bed, and I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I'm looking at the surgeon and he's saying, I'm losing him. We've got to get him back in surgery.
Jeffrey was rushed back into surgery where doctors stopped the bleeding. When he finally regained consciousness, Jeffrey had a new understanding of God's amazing love and presence in his life.
God loves you more than you've ever known. He knows your circumstances. He knows what you're going through. I used to wake up with a knot in my stomach. I wake up with joy in my heart. I know he's with me. You can't go through something like that and not be a changed man.
He has a peace about him. He's a very peaceful and very centered. He's really not fearful of anything now.
Jeffrey's recovery was long and difficult, but the peace, joy, and love of God he found on the day he faced death is now with him in everything he does.
There's a peace and a love there like I can't describe to you. And it's an entirely different way of living. I've never enjoyed living more. And I understand now what's really important. I want to live for God. And I pray that he'll give me the opportunity to continue to do that.
Did you ever wonder what's beyond the grave? Did you ever wonder about what's out there? A lot of people do. If you die, it's not the end of your existence, it's just the beginning. The question is, which way you're going to go? Now, Jeffrey knew the Lord, and the Lord was there with him, and so he died. But it didn't hurt. It wasn't painful. It was a joyous time because he had come into the presence of God Almighty, and the glory of eternity was now part of him. That's what God has for us. The Apostle Paul said, listen, I count everything I've had in my life as dung, as refuse, and I may know Christ and be found in him, that I may attain to the resurrection of the dead. I want to get there. I want to be part of the resurrection. That's what's important. All this other stuff doesn't make a bit of difference. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, or you have a good marriage or you don't. It doesn't really matter. Nothing matters except Jesus. And where are you going? And if you're not heading in that direction, you have missed the most important thing of existence. Because later on, if you don't know the Lord, and you've sinned as all of us have, you're going to be cut out apart from God himself, and you're going to spend eternity away from him. You know, it's not fun to do what the sinners do. It's awful. It's like hell begins too, and torment and evil and screaming and gnashing of teeth and a burning fire. And you go on and on, the horrors of it. Whereas the other is joy unspeakable and full of glory. God has something so wonderful for you. Don't turn it down. Now, right now, I want to ask you to do something. Have you given your heart to Jesus? Do you know him? Would you like to know him? I wouldn't spend another minute if I didn't know the Lord. The risks are too great. You're gambling with eternity. And right now, I just want to lead you in a simple prayer. And if you'll pray it with me, and if you'll mean it in your heart, God himself will come down, he'll hear that prayer, and he'll take you as part of his family. And if you want that, you want to know love like you've never known before, I want you to pray with me. Pray these words. Bow your head wherever you are. Men and women, boys and girls, wherever you are. Hospital bed, bar, hotel, at home, wherever. Bow your head and pray these words. Jesus. That's right. Jesus. Lord, I want to spend eternity with you. I don't want to be cast away from you. I want to be part of your heavenly family. And right now, Lord, I turn away from sin selfishness, the life I've been living, and I